About it for Dr. Michael Daignault. He is a real ER doctor and has been so active in the past, former Peace Corps volunteer. You're a good guy, Dr.
Thank you.
Michael Daignault.
Thank you. That's what they say.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. So the CDC is announcing this study on a link between vaccines and autism. Now, I thought they already had debunked that or had already done sufficient research in this area, and there was evidence that there isn't a link. Can you speak to this?
Right. Yeah. I think I was as shocked as you. Well, maybe not so much shocked anymore these days. Every day I wake up and the first thing I do is I look at the news and I'm just like, I can't catch up. But so just to give you some background information, you're 100% right. But the study that started this all back in 1998 was published in the Lancet Journal by Dr. Andrew Wakefield. As we all know, it was a study of 12 children with autism. There was no control study. It was very dubious research methods. He had ties already to vaccination litigation firms, as it were. And that's the study that RFK Jr., Jenny McCarthy, all the anti-vax people have sort of latched on for years, since 1998. And it basically attested that there was a link between autism and the MMR vaccine, which is in the news right now for obvious reasons. And so subsequently, that study was thrown out. It was retracted. Dr. Wakefield lost his medical license. And in the following years, there's been so many studies that were done to refute this. Forgive me for looking at some of them online here because I try to memorize a lot of things.
No. Please consult whatever. Yeah,
it was unbelievable. I mean, I knew that it had been done, but when I dove deep again, I couldn't believe it. So the Denmark cohort study in 2002 was 500,000 kids born between 91 and 98. There was no difference in autism rates between kids that were vaccinated and unvaccinated. That was published in New England Journal of Medicine. The Finland study in 2005, another 500,000 children who received the MMR vaccine. There was no increased risk of autism, no clustering of autism cases after vaccination. And then the meta-analysis. So just to let our viewers know, meta-analysis is the highest form of research that we have. It basically looks at all the studies that were done on a particular topic and groups all them together. It's the strongest form of research, evidence-based science, evidence-based medicine that we look for. And this included 1.2 million kids from multiple studies. There was no link between vaccines and autism. And I think the thing we have to remember is you always have to look at things with caution when there's a correlation between two data points. It seems that they're linked, but you have to understand that correlation doesn't imply causation. And so over that same period of time, there's been an increase in diagnoses of kids with autism just because of greater awareness. The DSM-5, which is how we diagnose, was more inclusive of different categories of autism on the autism spectrum. And so in 2000, 1 in 150 kids were diagnosed with autism. And then in 2020, now it's 1 in 36. So you're having an increased number of kids that are diagnosed with autism during that same period of time. And this is just a key cautionary point. If you look at science where the anti-vax community, particularly those against the MMR vaccine, are trying to say that correlation implies causation. But we have so many studies, including that meta-analysis, that did not find any link. So the fact that the CDC is going to spend time and research and money on this topic that's been explored and debunked is beyond me. I don't know why the Republicans and MAGA are just so scared of science, to be honest.
Yeah, it's troubling. And I also wonder to what degree they're reverse engineering these studies. I mean, I think they are so vested in the outcome. They want to prove that there is a link. And so you always worry about those studies. It's like the coffee industry doing those studies about how coffee is better for you than, a daily cup of coffee is actually a life extension device, et cetera. So I wonder about that. I did want to ask you, just while we're on it, you can certainly have a reaction to a vaccine, and it can be a violent reaction to a vaccine, right, doctor?
Right, and you can have, pain at the site. You can have fevers and chills. That's your body mounting an immune response. And so, one thing we looked at during the pandemic was to see if there was a connection between how strongly people had a reaction. I'm talking about local reaction, like swelling, pain, fevers, and chills that first day after you get the shot, connecting that to the immune response. And we actually found that people with a stronger adverse reaction actually mounted a stronger immune response. And so that was kind of a good thing to be able to tell patients, especially if they came to the ER, if they were having some pain after vaccination, that, well, actually, you're having a very strong reaction to this vaccine. That means your immune system is firing. And, research shows that you're going to generate a stronger, more robust response.
That's interesting, really interesting. All right. Now, I want to get to the Dr. Oz stuff. Dr. Oz was involved in a congressional hearing, right? You watched it or read the transcript or some, you're familiar with it. Give everybody an idea. Now, this Dr. Oz, remind us, he was a darling of Oprah. He had his own show. He rose to real national and even international prominence, I think, as a result of that. And then he became sort of he became, what's that?
He won some Emmys, 10 Emmys.
There you go. The TV show. And the TV show seemed good. It's kind of like what you do, explaining complex health situations to the general public. And yet he became sort of a pitchman for supplements and the kind of get out of jail free supplements where you kind of take this supplement pill and you'll never have to worry about fill in the blank. Give me the story on Dr. Oz from your perspective and the latest on him, please.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I was driving home from my shift last night at 2 a.m, and what better thing to listen to than his opening speech at the hearing yesterday. And to be honest, I was like, I'm going to go in with an open mind and listen to this on the drive home. And he has a really interesting background. He did a lot of great work. He developed a lot of great devices for cardiothoracic surgery and things like that, and that have been proven to save lives. And during the course of his speech, he made a couple really good points. He said that he would like to see more transparency for patients as far as like their insurance and how to navigate that system. I mean, we're all for that. And
Sure.
The second one, he said he wants to see AI kind of take a greater role in helping physicians be more efficient in their job so that they could spend more time with their patients. And yes, we are all for that. I mean, I wish I could take you to a shift one day, just so you could see how much clicking we have to do within the electronic medical record for every patient, like the amount of time we spend documenting versus the amount of time that we spend with patients. And so I'm glad that he wants to take that up. I mean, that's going to be no small feat for sure, because Congress is the one that sort of directs doctors to meet all these metrics and do all these things. And that's the reason why we are very not efficient sometimes when it comes to documenting and not being able to spend enough time with patients. So, and he said that he's all for protecting the vulnerable and preserving Medicaid and Medicare. But I worry that with like Medicare Advantage, for example, that's the private insurers part of Medicare, that he has said before he wanted to privatize Medicare. And that I feel like is going to leave a lot of people in the lurch, as it were. And in the current climate of just cutting, I'm just really scared that they're going to take the hatchet to Medicare and Medicaid, despite what he said yesterday.
Yeah, I was actually looking to the quotes because he kind of skirted the Medicare Medicaid thing. He didn't really commit to the notion that it was going to be protected. I think, as you are suggesting, he sort of put it out there as something that would exist, but it would probably exist in the private sector, would be the way you'd fill in that blank, because he was so careful about the way he approached it. So that's Dr. Oz, but he all of a sudden is going to be pretty relevant to our future, I guess. So that's the latest. What's happening, against this backdrop? There's this measles outbreak, started in Texas, then it was New Jersey, then there's more in Oklahoma. I wonder if you can update me on where the measles situation ends up in America right now.
Well, I think the big news this week was that the total number of cases, I think it's as of yesterday, was 353, has already surpassed the total we had in last year, which was 285. And in 2000, we had eradicated measles. And this is only the third time since 2000 that cases have gone over 200. And it's only March. The concerning thing, last time we were on here, we were actually giving credit to RFK Jr. for that op-ed that he wrote in Fox News, expressing that people needed to be vaccinated, and we appreciated that. But it's just since then he's basically gone back to the same anti-vax craziness. He said something the other day that I want to address on here. He said that the protection from the measles vaccine goes down 4.5% every year after you're vaccinated, and that's simply not true. I mean, if that were true, we would all have measles.
Right.
Like we would have zero immunity at this point.
Sure.
And if that were actually true, you would see many adults sick. You would see the entire population sick. And so you have to remember that whether it's vaccination or people that born before 1950 that got measles infected, that's lifetime immunity, and that's because the vaccine in particular just creates robust memory cells. So just to give you some more background, like when you get exposed to measles, it can take 7 to 21 days before you start showing symptoms. And so during that time, your immune system, when you're vaccinated, can rev up those memory cells, remind them that, hey, 40, 50 years ago, you got the MMR vaccine, create some antibodies to protect this person from becoming infected. And so we know that works just looking at what happens in the general population, that the vast majority of us have been vaccinated with the MMR vaccine and we're not getting sick.
As long as we're on RFK, the article I was reading last night, or not important when, it was about bird flu.
Mm-hmm.
And his prescription for attacking bird flu is to let it spread. He wants to let it spread on all these farms. I was telling everybody about this in the first hour. And the idea is that by letting it spread, much of the bird population will contract this and die, but some of that bird population, he's alleging, this is his kind of suggestion, will not get it. And then we have to focus on the genetics of those birds to realize the kind of natural immunity that could be acquired, or even in developing various therapies or modalities of treatment, we have to look at those creatures. Now, I was saying that's not the way they raise poultry anymore. It's not a natural environment. These are warehouses of these creatures packed in. It's horrifying. But beyond that, the genetic makeup is fairly uniform. So you're not going to have this kind of, it wouldn't be like the natural population where there would be some natural genetic resistance to perhaps this virus. You know what I mean, doctor? That's based on the little I know, it just seems tragically flawed.
Yeah, it's kind of like the whole let it rip, let it spread policy that some people wanted during COVID, including the nominee to run the NIH right now. It's called the Great Barrington Declaration that they signed, basically attesting to this policy that protect the vulnerable, but in the general healthy population, just let the virus rip, create a lot of natural immunity. And you hit the nail on the head. That's not how it works with poultry farms. Like for biosecurity, the measures that are in place right now at farms, if you have a number of poultry or particular poultry that are infected, the whole group gets culled. Like you said, they're in such tight quarters, and millions of birds have been culled for this reason. And that's just because they're in tight quarters. It's so easy for it to spread among the poultry that are already there. And so you just have to take down the whole population. And that's why egg prices are so high and have been so high. It's just because like a few birds get it and that whole group gets taken down.
Yeah, indeed. It's interesting. Of course, he doesn't want to cull any of the birds right now. This is the new RFK Jr. plan is don't cull any birds. But veterinary scientists say letting the virus sweep through poultry flocks unchecked would be inhumane and dangerous and have enormous economic consequences. It's a terrible idea, said Dr. Gail Hansen, a former state veterinarian for Kansas. For any number of reasons, it's a terrible idea. Every infection is another opportunity for the virus called H5N1 to evolve to a more virulent form. You talked about that with us before, the way these mutations are created. And geneticists have been tracking its mutations closely. And so far, the virus has not developed the ability to spread among people. We should say that, right?
Right.
But
Right. Not
yeah.
among people, like from person to person, but it has infected farm workers and people with close contact with sick birds. But you're right. Yes.
And they're saying to let it run through a flock of 5 million birds would be to allow literally 5 million chances for the virus to replicate or mutate. And then you've got problems. I mean, this is a horrible situation, but it's made more horrible by the strategy that RFK Jr. is laying down.
Yeah, it always, cases like this always remind me of the great quote from Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park, where he said, "Life finds a way." And it's so appropriate for this situation. Like if you were to let it rip and just do its thing, and the virus continues to replicate and has so many opportunities, it's going to find a way to be efficient at spreading from human to human. Because if you control the poultry, the livestock, the virus, as any life form, is just going to find other outlets to spread, and we would be the next target. And so just a quick point about how viruses replicate. The way that nature amazingly designed them is that the replication is imperfect. So when you look at an RNA strand virus and the different cells that come down that copy it, it's imperfect, and there's mutations that are just inbred in this process. And every time that replicates, just think about how many mutations just exponentially happen. And so that enables the virus to adapt and survive. Darwinism, the best adapted virus will be the one that becomes the dominant strain. And so you just give it more opportunity to replicate. That's what's going to happen.
I want to get to what to do in the ER since you're an ER doctor. I'll do that in just a second, but I wanted to touch on this announcement from Google. They are going to add AI for healthcare searches, and they're expanding, they say, knowledge panels to cover thousands more health topics. They're going to be available in more countries, more languages, and more AI. They have a what people suggest feature that will allow people to easily search through online commentaries from patients with similar diagnoses. And that's oftentimes where you get some of the truth about recovery and diagnosis. And I mean, you get it from other people who've been through it.
Yeah.
But the addition of AI is pretty substantial. I'm wondering how AI is used in your practice and if you use it and to what extent you have faith in AI being part of the one more modality by which we can look at health.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I mean, I use ChatGPT daily, multiple times a day. I don't even use like Google or any other search engines anymore, just because of the level of analysis. So when you do a simple Google search, you're going to get pages that just have the most number of terms that you searched on them in decreasing order, right? But I think what I love about, in particular, ChatGPT is that it can collate all that data into bullet points or however you want the data to be presented to you, and then it gives you analysis. And so oftentimes there are patients at work that I encounter in the ER that are difficult diagnoses, for example, and you're not sure what's going on. And you can input symptoms, you can input the test that you've done so far and ask it to generate a differential diagnosis. And I have found that extremely, extremely helpful. Just because there's just so much information that we're taught in med school, and oftentimes it's hard to remember all of that. And so just having that tool just sort of triggers it for me, and it's like, okay, yes, I remember this. Now I know the next steps to be able to diagnose or help this patient. So I would love to see it as far, going back to what Dr. Oz was saying, if it increases efficiency for us, almost like if you had a device in the room with the patient that was HIPAA compliant, that would listen to your conversation, that what the patient is saying they're there for, listen to what I'm saying, and put that and generate that into a medical note. That would be huge. That would allow us, because we want to spend more time with our patients. And if we could have that key, that would be amazing. I would be all for that.
That's fascinating. I mean, it's fascinating to see how it's integrated into daily healthcare strategies. And this is to follow up on, because let's really, as they say, put a pin in that, because I really would like to follow up. All right, so you're an ER doctor, and I thought we'd kind of, I saw something I think it was in the New York Times about things you should do before you go into the ER, or what you should keep in mind when you go to the ER, or something like that. And I thought, oh my God, we've got to ask you about that. And you had already done something like this before. So take us to your ER tips, or those things related to the ER, since you are an ER doctor. This is kind of your home court.
Yeah, I love that article in the New York Times, and it reminded me of one that I wrote in USA Today a couple years ago called "Do's and Don'ts of the ER," and it was just suggestions for people just to get through their ER visit. So the number one thing I would say is don't wait it out, especially for symptoms like chest pain or stroke, because those particular symptoms are very time dependent. The interventions that we can do in the ER, particularly for stroke. So, for example, at let's say 1:00 p.m., you develop facial droop, slurred speech, can't move the left side of your body, classic symptoms of a stroke. If you get to most ERs within 4 hours, you're a candidate for thrombolytics, which is a very powerful clot buster medication that we give through the IV to break up that clot. If you present to the ER within 24 hours, you're a candidate for thrombectomy, which is the neurointerventional radiologist goes in and literally takes out the clot. And so if you're there within 4 hours, you're a candidate for both of those things, and it really portends well for your survival and recovery of your stroke symptoms. So unfortunately, a lot of patients wait it out. They see how they feel. They want to give it a day. And then by the time they come in, there's nothing we can do, and those deficits are permanent. The other big thing is, I hate to have to bring this up, but don't assume that if you call 911 and come by ambulance that you're going to be able to jump the line and get into a bed in the ER faster. That's why we have the triage process set up. You're met, whether you walk in or you come by ambulance, by a triage nurse who assigns your a severity index to what you're coming in for and puts you in the right spot. So I don't want people to think that they can jump the line doing that. You always want to make sure you bring a list of your doctors, your medications, medical problems. I've had so many patients say, well, look it up on your computer. Going back to the whole AI thing, we don't have a centralized medical record. Like, different hospitals use different emergency medicine hospital records that are not integrated. So it's really important that you know your doses and your medications. Just carry a small laminated card with you. Focus on the main reason you're in the ER. Pick one thing. And, please bring your own charger, bring something to read. I would say
Yeah,
bring
you
a
go back
set.
on that 4 hour thing. I'm thinking, great, doc, I can get to the ER in that 4 hour time, but then you guys make me wait for 4 hours to get in to see a doctor.
You wait 4 hours for 15 minutes with the doctor.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But you're saying, this is interesting. I don't have any of these things that you're talking about. It's probably a good idea. You need to know what medications you're on. A little laminated card would do all of that.
It's so helpful because, oftentimes we do make changes to medication. We do need to get in touch with your doctor, especially if you've had a procedure recently. And, the assumption of the general public is that all that information is just readily available for us. And it's not, and it can be very difficult to find.
I have a surgery tomorrow on my hand.
What are you doing? What are you getting
I
done?
have a trigger finger on this hand. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so they're doing, it's a pretty straightforward surgery. I'm told it's not that big a deal.
Like a release? Like a trigger release?
To which I said to the doctor, sure, not a big deal to you. You're just doing the surgery. You're going home or playing golf. I got to actually recover. So, tomorrow afternoon I'll do the show and then I'll get it done. But I'm a little bit anxious about it, but it's because it's not a general anesthesia. I'm not worried about that part. I'm more worried about the recovery, which I think can be a little painful. And, I'm also, I'm in the middle of Mark's Madness. I have to press buttons and know what's happening here. So, but rehydrating or making sure you're hydrated before surgeries, any of that stuff matter or not really?
It depends on the surgery and how extensive it is, and also whether you're allowed to eat or drink before.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Are you? Do they have you slated for physical therapy after too, or?
Yeah, I think they do. That's a big part of it, actually, to recover some kind of yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, I think that's probably the surgery is just a small part, but what you commit to PT is really gonna predict how well you recover.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. I mean, you really have, it's time consuming, but that's what you have to do. Somebody paid you a compliment. Ricky O'Bear says, great guest. Remember, the Red Cross needs you. Only 8% of those who can do donate. Yeah, I guess it's not, blood donation is,
Yeah.
I don't know.
We lost a lot of blood donations like during COVID. There was a huge dearth in blood. And there was a time, I think, during the pandemic where we changed our criteria for transfusion. So interestingly, the cutoff that we've always used is a hemoglobin of 7. And the other day I was like, why? I wonder why it's 7. There's got to be a good reason biomedically why the cutoff is 7. And I looked it up, and it's because 7 was considered a lucky number. I could not believe it. So, and this is dogma across hospitals, ERs, that you don't transfuse unless the hemoglobin is under 7. And I always assumed there was a real, yeah, it's because
That's
7
very
was considered
funny.
lucky. And everybody adopts this policy. It's crazy.
I love it. I love it. Look, good stuff. We'll talk more in 2 weeks. We'll compile plenty to address. And if people have any questions, we'll integrate them for next time. Reach us here, the Mark Thompson Show at gmail.com. He's the great Dr. David Daignault. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next time. Bye, doctor. That's Vital Signs for today. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped. And please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.